Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the regular scheduled council meeting for the City of Hudson for Monday, January 28th, 2013. If you could please rise and say the pledge with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chief Johnson.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have two new sergeants we're going to swear in today. So can I have Sergeant Schultz and his family come forward?
Over by the flag, come on.
Yeah.
Keep moving.
Keep going.
Keep going.
You got to cover the front.
Yeah.
But you've got to be up front.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks. Raise your right hand. I, Peter Schultz,
I, Peter Schultz,
having been appointed as sergeant for the City of Hudson Police Department, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much.
Officer Schultz is a 22-year member of the Hudson Police Department, or Sergeant Schultz, I'm sorry. 22-year member of the Hudson Police Department. He's currently our school resource officer, but that will be changing here at the end of the school year. So, but we're happy to have him on board. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Sergeant Willems and family, please come forward.
Congratulations.
Hey, congratulations.
You're used to being in this room.
I know, right?
I, Jeffrey Willems,
I, Jeffrey Willems,
having been appointed as sergeant
for the City of Hudson Police Department,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Sergeant Willems has been with our department for 5 years, but 6 years. Prior to that, he was 5 years with North Hudson. So he's been in our community for 11 years, and he's currently my detective sergeant. So we're looking forward to having both sergeants out in the street and supervising. So thank you very much, and good luck.
That was cool. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Mayor Burchill?
Here.
District 1 Morset?
Here.
District 2 Yakub? Here. District 3 Bernard? Here. District 4 Tewinkle?
Here.
District 5 Hoggett?
Here.
District 6 Vanslow is excused.
At this point in our agenda, we take comments and suggestions from citizens present on any item that is not on our agenda. So if there's anyone here that would like to speak to the council, now is your time. So is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? I'll ask one more time if there's anyone that would like to speak to the council on any item that's not on the agenda. Now is your time.
Yes. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear overall.
All right. Well, then why don't you come up and give us your name and address?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. Gloria Kramer. I live over on 2nd Street at Corview Apartments. Most of the time you see me over here talking to you about safety items. And what I want to say today is thank you to the fire department, because they came, I think a week or 10 days ago. And unfortunately, it was a false alarm, but they were there in like 30 seconds flat. And when we have a building full of people that may or may not be able to evacuate by themselves, it was really, really wonderful. I'm sorry I missed all the excitement. I wasn't there. Oh, well, what can I say? I would also like to bring up money. You know what that is. You remember from a long time ago. The people that operate the Corview Apartments operate on a really thin budget. Right now, our director is on part-time and our maintenance is on part-time. And you and I both know that all these irregularities happen at night or weekends. And I'm just wishing that someone could take another look at all of the expenses, budgets, people, whatever it is that you look at, to determine the amount that the city contributes and see if there is some way for us to have a little bit more. Not asking for $1 million, but a little bit more. And I don't know if you saw this in the St. Paul paper last week. Anyway, the governor says that we have $484 million budget surplus. That's, to me, a lot of money. So maybe we could get Dean Knudsen to bring some of that back to Hudson for us. That would be wonderful. I would love it. And just a quick comment on the library. You know, I'm a volunteer over there and all that kind of
That's
stuff.
on the agenda tonight, so.
Oh, all right. No comment then. Disregard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, consent agenda items.
To approve the regular meeting minutes of January 14th, 2013. To approve claims for payment in the amount of $468,488.15. A detailed description is available in the clerk's office on request and is posted on the city's website. To approve the issuance of 2 regular operators licenses for the period January 29th, 2013 to June 30th, 2014. Additional operator license application information is available in the clerk's office on request. To approve the issuance of 2 temporary Class B retailers licenses and 1 temporary Class B license to the Knights of Columbus St. Croix Council 1762 to sell beer and wine for fish fry events on February 22nd and March 8th, 2013, and to sell beer on March 22nd, 2013. All from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. at 1500 Vine Street, the lower level of St. Patrick's Church. To approve the 2013 Public Works Service charge rates as presented. To approve the St. Croix Animal Friends Raise the Wolf Dog Walk to be held in Lakefront Park on Saturday, June 8th, 2013 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To approve the Monica Jensen Foundation Foot Race to be held in Lakefront Park Saturday, October 12th, 2013 at 8 p.m. with the route to be revised according to the police chief's recommendations. To approve the Lesburg Memorial 5K Walk Run to be held in Lakefront Park on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2013 at 6 p.m. To place on file the quarterly reports of the police chief, fire chief, and building inspector, and the monthly report of the finance officer, and the January 16th, 2013 minutes of St. Croix EMS Commission. That is all.
Move for approval.
Second. T. Winkle?
Yes.
Bernard?
Yes.
Morset?
Yes.
Yakub?
Yes.
Haggett?
Yes.
Okay. First item on the agenda is the approval of wage level rates for our EMT personnel. Chief Eby.
So I spoke
earlier at the finance meeting tonight about increasing the wages for our EMTs and paramedics. The reason for this is we're asking a lot more of our staff these days. We're asking them to be away from home a whole lot more. We're asking them to attend additional training. We're asking them to do a lot. We're asking that our paramedics take a critical care course in which will allow them to take specialized transports from Hudson Hospital to the metro cities or wherever they need to go. Metro hospitals, I'm sorry. With that, and not everybody's required to do it, but we're asking that folks do it, is, like I said, it's going to be a higher level of care. We can continue our relationship with Hudson Hospital, and we can continue providing the level of care we want to provide for our citizens. For that, I was asking for an increase for just those that do that training, which is approximately 180 hours, including rotations at Regions Hospital and the Metro or wherever they're at school for that. So I'm asking that for the paramedics. For the EMTs on the ambulance, we've gotten to a point where this is no longer a hobby for them. This isn't something they can do casual. This is something we're asking them to be basically a part-time job. What I asked for that was for our basic level, which is the first level of EMTs, that it would be an additional $5 per 12-hour stipend that they already get. And then for the intermediates, it would be an additional $10 and for the 12-hour stipend, and for the paramedics, an additional $10 for their 12-hour stipend as well.
Okay. Questions? We approved it in finance, and it's gonna come out of their budget. There's no budget increase. It's gonna have to come out of the budget, possibly the chase vehicle. Might not be, depending on how the revenue comes in. After 6 months, we'll take a look at it. Anybody have any questions for Chief or comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve the wage increase as outlined.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, thank you. Authorize city engineers to proceed with updates to the city plans and specification requirements.
This is a proposal to update the city's standard specifications and detail plates that design engineers and contractors use when they're doing work in the city. The last time they were done was in February 2010, and over the course of the 3 years, we have found some items that we do want to update and make better on our detail plates and our specifications. The work order was for $7,500 hourly, not to exceed $7,500.
And that's going to be split between the water utility, storm utility, sanitary, and public works. Correct? Where's Neil? That's correct? We're going to split it between the... That's correct. Yeah, okay, thank you. Questions? You want to explain to everybody what that, how these work?
Sure, the city has set up standard detail plates that a design engineer knows what standards the city has for installing a hydrant or a gate valve for the water, or what type of material to put under the pipes when they're constructing sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water main, doing street work too. And then the contractor knows the standards for the cities because they have the drawings of what they're supposed to do and the specifications on how to do it.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consider pay increase for police department casual call officers. Chief Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can see from the issue sheet, our casual call officers are paid $12 per hour, which has been what they've been paid since 2004 when this program first started. I did some comparisons with 4 surrounding municipalities that have part-time officers, and as you can see, we are the lowest among all of them, with Glenwood City being just 50 cents more than we are. Our casual call officers are doing a lot more responsibilities. They're on patrol by themselves. They answer minor calls for services, and this is mostly on Friday and Saturday at nights. They are conducting traffic enforcement, OWI enforcement that we train them to do. And they're also doing medical transports for us in regards to mental health, people being taken to a secure facility. Because of there hasn't been a wage increase and almost coming up on the 9 years, I felt it was necessary to bring this forward. And I can do this within the $20,000 I have in my budget for part-time. All I would have to do is make some scheduling adjustments and not have as many casual call officers out for 16 weeks during the lull of the season, per se, which is going on right now. And then 36 weeks out of the year, mostly over the summer and the fall of the months, we would have 2 officers working Friday and Saturday nights to make sure that we augment our full-time officers.
So Marty, just a point of clarification, it's the casual call officers who've not seen a pay increase.
Correct, that's the casual call officers, not the full-time.
Right. And how long does a typical casual call officer stay with us?
Well, we've got one.
Do we end up hiring?
Usually they stay together. We've seen several that have left after 2 years, but we've had one officer that's been with us the entire time, and we've had several that have been here for at least 6, 7 years. So
And
we've
we
got
sometimes hire from that pool, right?
We have hired from that pool, correct. Some have stayed on just to keep up their certification if they decide they want to come back into law enforcement. We have one officer on there that used to be a chief of police of a small town who's currently keeping up his certification. He has talked about coming back into law enforcement, but when you have that kind of experience on a part-time level, you don't want to be losing it, especially to, like I said, St. Croix County, who's making $16.26 an hour. So definitely would like to try to keep these people.
If you step it up in the summer months, you're going to consider putting anyone on foot downtown?
Well, we hope to. If we have enough bodies on that we can do that, we'd like to be able to put some more people downtown. I know that we've tried to put extra officers out in the parks, especially on Saturdays and Sundays when we've had more people down Lakefront Park.
Okay.
I move for approval.
Is there a second? Okay. Questions? Any other questions, discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a disallowance of a claim for Judith Nolan, resolution number 2-13. I think everyone has the information in front of them.
Need to suspend the rule. Move to suspend.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Bernard,
Yes.
Morset,
Yes.
Yakub,
Yes.
Haggett,
Yes.
T. Winkle.
Yes.
Can I ask what happened with this? What was the incident? It's not in the issue. Right.
It was a transport with another.
Yep.
I'll move to adopt resolution number 2-13.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a presentation by the Hudson Area Joint Library. Barb.
Thank you. Just a minute to get this computer up and function.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, that's Barbara Peterson, who is president of the Hudson Area Joint Library.
I don't know. It's a long story.
I think we're all set to go. I really need a stool here in order, but so I will. If I'm bouncing up and down, I apologize. I'm sort of on my tiptoes. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. My purpose is not to ask for action tonight, but instead to begin to provide you with information that I think you're going to need later this year when you're going to be faced with a decision about the future of the library. And I'm hoping that we begin a dialogue so that when that time comes, you will have answers to all of the questions that you have about this matter. I'd like to begin by talking about a question that I am guessing is in many of your minds, and that is, in the time of the internet, do we need public libraries? So I'd like to begin to address that question by looking at the situation here in this community. Over the course of the last 12 years, the internet has become an integral part of all of our lives, for good or for ill. Over that same time, the population in this service area has grown significantly, up 30%. Interestingly enough, use of the libraries over that same period of time has grown 131%. So that today, compared with 12 years ago, use of the library on a per-person basis has risen from 6 books per use per person per year to 10.5. That's a 75% increase over that period of time. Today, over half of the residents of the city of Hudson are active library users. They have library cards. Each fall, Linda Donaldson, the library director, purges from those card holders, those people who haven't used their card in the last 3 years. So those are current users. Each day the library is open, 1,100 items on average are checked out. And every day the library is open, on average, 500 people visit the library. Now they visit the library for more than checking books out, although a lot of that happens, of course. They come to the library for a variety of reasons. As you all know, when we moved from the old library building into the new library building, significant enhancements were made to the building and to the technologies that are available for the patrons that come and use the library. Many people come to the library to use the modern computers. There are 16 that are available for public use. People come and use those to access the internet, to stay connected with family and friends. They use them to fill out job applications and resumes. They use them to complete online courses. In order to get credit, you need to take complete exams in many cases, and the library staff is ready, willing, and able to proctor those exams. For many people who come to visit the library, they see it as an educational institution. In this modern time, there are many challenges in navigating the internet and using social media. The library provides courses on how to use Facebook safely and securely, and how to use all the new electronic devices that people are acquiring, Kindles and Nooks and iPads and smartphones, particularly how to use those pieces of equipment to download downloadable books from the library system. For others who come to visit the library, they come, parents and children, to encourage their children to become readers and to increase their literacy. Last year, more than 300 programs were attended by almost 9,000 children and adults. Finally, many people come to the library to use the meeting rooms, the small and larger rooms. Members of not-for-profit organizations, service organizations, all who are about improving this community. So the library is used in many ways. The question that will be facing you later this year is, does the city of Hudson need its library? A couple of other matters, key points that I'd just like to review with you. As you well know, funding for the library from the four municipal partners has remained flat for the last 5 years. In the second year of that period, the Friends of the Library stepped up and committed to providing $15,000 a year for 5 years to fund the library. They have done an admirable job, have honored that commitment, raising those monies through bookstores, sales at their bookstore and the book sale. Last year, with encouragement, the library board undertook its first annual fundraising campaign. And by year's end, 333 donors had given more than $23,000 net to the library. In 2010, the library board was trying to plan for the future and felt that they needed additional information about the wants and needs and the interest of the community, engaged a reputable library management firm who undertook a survey. The response to that survey provided statistically significant information. 2 points to share from that survey tonight that I think are relevant to the matter. 2/3 of the respondents said they would pay more in taxes to fund their library, in some cases significantly more. And the item that was their highest on their wish list for the library was more hours. In 2013, as you know, the taxpayers of this city are now subject to double taxation. They are paying into the local levy to fund the library and many other wonderful services. They're also paying into the county library funding system. It doesn't need to be the case next year. The taxpayers of this community can be exempt from that double taxation by approving a referendum to increase the City of Hudson's levy limit. If they do so, what is the impact? The impact on the taxpayers is zero. They will pay no more in taxes. The impact on the city is zero. You will not have to in any way reduce services reduce the funding for any department. But for the library, there will be the benefit of increased funding. This graph, or this series of charts, is very familiar to you. Neil Soltis put this together for you last year as he attempted to provide information about the options that might present themselves for this year. The option in the upper left-hand corner is the current status. In that situation, you are providing funding to the library of $280,000 from the local levy, and the taxpayers of Hudson are paying into the county library funding system $277 and $173 of additional dollars. Those of us on the library board very much hoped last year that the option that would prevail this year would have been one of the two on the right. Our highest priority would have been for the upper right hand, with all of the partners in the system, in the joint library, and all exempt. We are hoping we believe mostly that the one in the lower right is the most likely option for next year. It's the option where the City of Hudson is exempt. Taxpayers do not have to pay, are not taxed doubly, and the taxes that they do pay stay in Hudson. Stay in Hudson and fund the library. Now, I think the next question that I'm guessing you're asking yourself is, okay, that means that the library would have $977,077. What would you do with that money? It's a fair question. So let's look back just a moment at the funding over the last couple of years and how we've paid for library operations. We've already talked about the money that's come from the municipal partners. It turns out that people who do not live in our 4 municipalities use our library, and the city reimburses us for that service. It turns out that our library users don't always return their books in a timely fashion, and there are fines. And in 2011, we had the $15,000 from the Friends. Even so, we were short $70,000 to maintain operations as they had been previously. The board decided to tap into a reserve fund that remained after the renovation of the library. Last year, we added the Bridge the Gap funding, and still that was not sufficient. We tapped into those reserves to the tune of $53,000. You might take a note that it turns out that the funding coming from the county for reimbursement for non-residents' use is growing. That just means that they're using materials at an increasing rate just as our residents are. It also, if you look at those numbers, you're going to see that the fine revenue is going down. And you might say, what's going on there? Well, it turns out that there are no fines associated with the use of downloadable books. If you download a book onto your Nook or Kindle or whatever, you check it out for a particular period of time, and when that time is up, you no longer have access. You have no opportunity to pay a fine to continue to have access. So there's some pros and cons with regard to downloadable books. 2013, we had a significant debate on the board about whether or not we should continue to tap into the reserve fund. It was, from many board members' perspectives, reduced to a level that perhaps was not good. In the end, we compromised and decided to continue to take at least $50,000 from that reserve fund. We still have, at the end of that, we'll have enough to cover a couple of months of operation or an emergency. But that was still not enough, and as many of the people in this room know, I'm sure, we had to make some significant cuts. Despite the information on the survey, we ended up cutting hours. We had been open 50 hours a week. We're now open 43 hours a week, and we're closed on Mondays. It's a 14% reduction. We reduced by 1/3 the money available to buy library materials. For example, last year we had allocated $75,000 to buy books. This year we have $50,000 to buy books. So, to answer the question I posed earlier, $977,000, how would that money be used? Well, firstly, we would not tap into the reserve fund to any additional, and that money would be available to deal with any emergency that might come up. Right now, we might estimate that's $180,000. We would restore the cuts that we made on Monday. We would add back in money to buy the books and other library materials that people come to use in the library. We're not quite sure exactly how much that would cost, but we believe that there would be the possibility of potentially adding additional hours, the one thing that our users said in that survey 2 years ago that they wanted. We could open at 9 a.m. or potentially even be open on Sunday, as a number of libraries in the area are. So why do we think we're on this course back to a municipal library? As you know, the other 3 partners in the joint library submitted letters indicating that they would be withdrawing from the joint library at the end of the year. There is a proviso in those letters that they can withdraw those intents, but in fact, the lowest cost option for the taxpayers in those other 3 municipalities is to leave the joint library. So we believe they will do that. Finally, what kind of timeline are we on? We would hope that by July, a special election has been approved by you all, and that the wording on the referendum has been agreed to. In October, hopefully, just given budgeting timelines, it would be best for all concerned if that referendum could take place not later than the end of October. After the referendum, the municipal library would need to be formed. Board members appointed and approved. The building lease would need to be reviewed and renewed. And then hopefully on January 2nd, 2014, at 9 a.m., the City of Hudson Library would open for business. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to answering your questions now and over the course of the next few months. As I said, I'm hoping that this is a dialogue that we will begin.
Anyone have any questions right now they'd like to ask?
I have some.
Okay. Mary?
You mentioned the surveys, two-thirds, the two-thirds requested, would pay more in taxes. How many surveys were sent out and how many were returned?
I don't have those numbers, Mary, but I can get them for you.
Okay.
Okay?
And,
just let me make a note to make sure that
okay.
And I'd be curious how many of them, I guess, were city of
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. I'd be curious, too, how many of them were City of Hudson residents, if we know that?
Sure, yep.
That'd be
yeah,
great.
Yep,
Thanks.
okay. So I will get more information about that survey and the respondents and so forth, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm just looking at the taxpayer statement, zero impact. If we pass a referendum that citizens of Hudson will pay taxes directly to the library, is that how it works?
No, they'd pay them to you.
To the city?
To the city.
Instead of to the county?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Will it be the same amount, or will it be?
It would not be any more than they're currently paying.
Okay.
But it would be more than the city's currently charging residents for library usage. And I think that point needs to be brought out a little bit. What you're essentially asking us to do, and what your preference is that the city absorb that charge back to taxpayers. That's a result of a county change in funding. The county decided to change their funding mechanism, and you're asking, and this council made a very clear decision to keep that separate this past year, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for a reason, because we had hoped that the county would reconsider its funding mechanism, and by the city absorbing it, it would sort of preclude that from happening.
Well, the funding mechanism is actually in state law. The exemption requirement is in state law. So,
but the
county is implementing that state law. That's right. The county is implementing the state law.
And it was the county that, I mean, Neil, help me out if I'm wrong here, but it was the county who chose to fund at 100%.
Correct. They're required by state statute to fund at 70%.
And
they elected to go to 70%
100%.
or to 100%.
Okay.
Over the course of several years, years ago.
And that's why we all sort of got trapped.
Right. And so today, if you live in the city of Hudson, you are paying I think it's $277,000 together to the county. The unfortunate part of that is what that does is it lowers the taxes on the taxpayers in the rest of the county. It doesn't go to any library. That's what's really, I mean, people have this mistaken impression that $70,000 is going to the other libraries. That's not the case. Where that money goes is into the funding system, and it reduces the taxes on the rest of the county.
Mm-hmm. Which is the rub.
Which is the rub.
Correct.
Yeah. It is the rub. And our taxpayers are not, the library's users are not getting, well, they're getting just a tiny little bit, because we do get reimbursed, but really we don't get any more, because the taxpayers of Hudson are paying into the county library funding system.
If the county would have gone back to 70%, we would have increased our amount to the library, the Hudson Joint Library, by, Neil, do you know that number, or Barb, do you know that number off that? It was a significant amount of money, wasn't it?
It was a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
It would have been in the $100,000 range.
That would have come directly to our library, instead goes to the rest of the taxpayers in the county, as you said. And one of the things that was very frustrating from my part is why the library board would not support that, to go from 100 back to 70%. In fact, opposed it. And that cut $135,000 or $140,000 out of your operating budget, which for me didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
So,
I mean,
that's a fact. And I can understand that perspective. There is the perspective that we don't know what the future of the library is. And if the other partners leave the library, then And if reimbursement is at 70%, that will reduce the resources available to the library from those municipalities. Anyway, it's a very complicated.
I was on the understanding that the reason why they are choosing to leave the library is because we have to pay in 100% versus
Correct.
70. And if they would have stayed at 70, we wouldn't have lost the 3 partners, which is a problem.
I've been told both things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I can tell you, Barb, that the heads of the municipalities had all agreed that they would go back to their boards to fully fund at 70%.
Okay.
Now, whether or not the boards would go along with it, that's another story. But
Right.
So what you're saying is that if we would have stayed at 70%, they would have gotten 130,000 more this year, and the deficit you ran was 70,000?
That's right.
So you wouldn't have run a deficit this year if we would have stayed at the 70%, is what I'm understanding.
Correct.
Or you would have spent more and run a deficit, depending on how you chose to run the books.
Correct.
Right. I mean, it would we wouldn't have run a deficit, but we would probably have still had to. There would probably still have been some modifications needed.
So I guess philosophically, and just at this point, I'm saying philosophically, I'm opposed to the city absorbing a tax increase on our residents that the county imposed due to a change, and they had the opportunity, and they were lobbied by various bodies that are part of the joint library. They had an opportunity to change that. Even to go back partway would have been helpful. And so I'm struggling a little bit, Barb, with you're asking us to, put this on
At this
city
point,
residents.
I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm providing you with information
and you're just
about
saying
a
that's your
situation that may well
Right.
happen this year. So I wanted, and I'm willing to come back and provide updates or further information, because this is the sands are shifting under our feet, and so I'm only laying out what I think the situation is from my perspective on January 28th.
And I appreciate it very much, and I'm just
Yeah,
sharing
and
a little bit about
I
where I'm coming
understand your
from.
frustration. I can understand it. It's not. I know that you are trying to do the very best, and we're trying to do the very best.
So here's one question I have, and maybe if we can't talk about it tonight, we could have it, in a future discussion. When we purchased this building, I was never under the impression that the library was going to be a long-term tenant of the building. I was fully under the impression that the library was going to be purchasing the building.
Yes.
And so that operating expenses were going to become, something that was going to be separate from the city because we were no longer going to be owning the building. And that was my hope, and that was part of I think it's part of what sold the council. The thought was that perhaps our police department would be renting back from the library for a short period until we built a new public safety building. And I recognize that a lot has changed since that time, but I'm hearing nothing about any future plan to purchase the building. And I need to understand where that went, because what we were told by the library board at that time was, if we can get in, and I know there's several people here who were part of that discussion, if we can get into the library, that's going to help us with fundraising. And it's going to be much easier to be able to sell the community on helping us purchase the building. And it sounded like a win-win.
I can understand.
It did. And so here we are, we're talking about renewing the lease. I'm hearing nothing about long-term plans to purchase the building, but just how can we get more money? And I guess I'm a little bit confused as to where we're headed long-term for the city.
And so this is really one of the basic questions, I think. If the library is a city library, how can the library own the building if it's a city library?
I don't think they can, Barb. I think it has to be a city-owned property.
Right.
If it's a municipal library.
If it's a municipal library. So I think that's part of the shifting sands here, is that depending on how things work out this year, I think that to be honest, I have not made any efforts as the library president to reach out to potential donors. But I know that those who have tell me that until the library has a sustainable operational funding situation, that most funders are hesitant to add dollars to that situation. Most funders want to be only involved in capital. And if they believe that the future of the library is not sustainable for operational funding, that it's going to be a very, very hard sell to get them to provide money for capital either purchase or enhancements.
But you did have contributors willing to contribute. I wasn't on the council when the library came, but I did some digging, some research, and there was an article in the Star Observer about how the Phipps was willing to give $500,000 in endowment. And that was November 2008, which I think was shortly after the library was formed.
Joint library?
Yep. So, I mean, that was before they even wouldn't have known if there was going to be, success in operations. They were willing to give $500,000. Did anybody in the library board decide to take their donation?
That donation.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. Jeff Zeiss, resident of Hudson. That pledge was a contingent pledge. If the plan would have been approved by the voters in the fall of 2008, then they would have been the lead donor in that fundraising thing. But it was contingent on the approval. And part of that approval was getting the approval for increased operating funds as well, which would have put the library on a solid track. So since that didn't go through, that contingent pledge from the Phipps was never fulfilled.
Which plan? The actual library?
This was the one that was voted on in 2008.
Yeah, where I believe it was, we want a library, we don't want our taxes raised for it?
No, not at all. Actually, in that 2008 time period, there was a referendum, not just in the city, but for all four partners. There was actually two referenda, one for the purchase of the building and one for the operational funds.
Right.
And all
so
eight
the
would have had
the billion passed, if I recall, but the raising taxes for operations didn't.
And for the plan to move forward, everything would have had to pass, all eight. And since all eight didn't pass, then that.
So then the Phipps
was not
rescinded.
really right. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say rescinded, but that was a contingency for the pledge. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact, you've got people out there putting flyers up that we're closing the library, which is false.
That's right. That's right. In fact, and when I learned that was happening, I actually contacted the Star Observer, and there was a pretty lengthy article trying to assure people that we were not closing the library, and to give them the facts. So we tried as quickly as we could to respond. Now, I know, unfortunately, not everybody reads the Star Observer, but
I think they're still out there. I've received a couple calls. Barb, I thank you for giving us this information, something we do have. There's a little bit of new information, not much. But I'm also trying to wrap my head around the fact that if your organization, and I've been involved with quite a few in town, you go out and you try to fundraise, you try to write grants, you go after it if you want something bad enough. You want a new building, you write grants, you go out and fundraise. Don't you think it would look better in the eyes of the council and your other municipality joint partners to see you focus and go in and try and get that kind of support out there, and something that we can look at and say, hey, they've got the support. Then they would see that we support you guys because you're making the effort to get the money.
Well, I mean, our first annual fundraising campaign, 333 donors.
Great.
I mean, so I think we actually are doing what you've just suggested. The problem is most of the foundations do not want to support operations. They want to give money for capital or for new initiatives, new programs.
So wouldn't you go after that money to buy the building that was the original plan?
Well, if the joint library continues,
Because for one, nobody wants to see the library closed. I don't.
Okay.
I don't think that's anybody's plan.
I don't either.
And I don't think that's anybody's plan. So I
Right,
really wish that rhetoric would stop. And you coming here and giving us a dialogue is a heck of a good start.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was hoping, because, you know, I believe we're all well-intentioned people trying to find a solution on all of this, and it's gonna,
So if the library becomes a municipal library, then the city is in charge of the budget you receive.
It's in charge of the money it appropriates.
Right,
to the
right.
library.
We decide
From a
how.
separate board.
Okay,
that's in charge
so
of
we
spending.
decide what their budget will be, though.
Correct.
Well, you decide how much money you're going to appropriate to the library. They decide how to spend it.
Correct. That's what I
Well,
was trying to say.
We don't get into the nitty-gritty of the
Right,
budget.
right. That's what I'm trying to say. So it could be less, it could be more based on what we have.
There's state statutes that you have to follow to fund at a certain level. though,
Okay.
That
The
we have no
100%,
control
yeah.
over.
So I guess my question is, at you had $711,000, almost $712,000 to operate the library this year.
Right.
And you came into a deficit. And I don't know if it's something that we have the rights to or not, but I would like to see where the spending went. I mean, you want us to become a municipal library, and we're gonna hand over a budget to you guys, and
if you want to see the numbers, we
I'd
can
love to see the
yeah,
budget.
right.
Yeah, it's all public
We have them
record,
here.
so.
We do?
Yeah.
Yes, they present us so that we have a backup when you approve their appropriation in the city
Okay.
budget.
I didn't know we had them here.
So what I probably can do is just verify with Linda that it's
The current.
final and current budget. and then
Right,
I can
right.
get
That would be
Okay,
great.
I just thought it was separate because they.
No.
We get a
All
copy
right.
of what they're proposing.
Yeah,
as part
nothing-
of the budget
everything
process.
I would like to see where the spending and go. I mean, we all have to do the same on our committees. We have to
Right, exactly.
decide how it's
So-
being spent.
So I'll do that, Mary. I'll verify with Linda that we have the correct numbers and then get it out to everybody.
Thanks.
Good. Okay, thanks, Devin.
I think what we have a lack of here is a clear vision of, in 2016, what is our library going to look like? Will it still be joint library? Will the city of Hudson still own the building? I think we could sit here and go, well, geez, it's all up to the library, and we can kind of let that go. Or we can step up and perhaps offer some counter visions, like, for example, the city and the library could work together to make it a full library, hence find a new home for the police department. And in doing so, endowments would come into capital improvement in the library, which is totally possible, because as they point out, endowments come typically in capital and not in operation. So to me, this seems more like an opportunity and not so much a problem, in that we can predict numbers, we can understand the tax situation, we can understand the building situation, because all of these to me are one whole big problem, and you can't just kind of take the little pieces and hope that we come up with a vision. So I think somewhere along the line, if we could come up with a way to harness that, what's it going to look like in 2016, we probably can make better decisions today than we are or think we might want as we're going forward. And I don't know who takes charge of that, but I think as the city, we have some obligation to make sure that that somehow comes to fruition.
I think that's a wonderful idea, and figuring out how we can do that together, I think would be very good.
I think it's important, and John, you weren't here at the time, so it's important for people to recognize that where we are today is very different than where we intended to be when we purchased the building.
I understand that, and I am a member of the community, so
Yep.
I have had conversations. My point is, that kind of matters, but it kind of doesn't. Meaning that I think we could come up with a picture that will get us to the future and not kind of stumble through where we're at now.
Well, yeah. I don't agree entirely, because when we bought that building as a city, it was not the intention to keep it. It was the intention to sell it to the joint library.
I think that was the hope, yeah.
That was the hope. It was the plan.
It was a lot more than hope. It was a plan. That's what was.
But I'm saying, because so many things have changed, do we need to rethink? Do we need to rethink the location of our building? I'm just asking the question. We have to
Yeah.
ask some really big questions. Do we need to rethink the location of it?
It's certainly possible.
Do we need to rethink, who occupies that building? I think we really need to step way back and not just say, well, because we're there, now we need to find out how to get more money to keep it going. That wasn't really the intention when we started down this path. So I'm open to suggestions, but there needs to be some recognition that we're taking taxpayers along with us, and it was not the intended path when we started out on it.
If we were to look at our budget from 2013 to 2014, to go to a basic level of service is a 37% increase in funding for the library. That needs to come from a referendum, because there's no way we can make a 37% or $266,000 addition to our budget with levy limits.
That's right.
That's just, I don't think any of us are that creative to find $266,000.
That's why it's important to get those survey results that Mary had.
Right. Certainly, yes, because I think you will find, comfort in them, because it was a statistically significant survey. I mean, the results based on the number of respondents was statistically significant. So, and I think.
Can I talk about the survey a little?
Certainly.
Okay. So, I mean, the quick answer on the survey is that the consultants felt that they wanted to get 20% return ratio, and they sent out 1,000 surveys throughout the whole service area, and the city's about half of that, so probably 500 went to the city, and they did get something over 20%, so they felt good about that. And actually, there were two surveys. There was the mailing out survey, and then there was a web survey. Now, the web survey is kind of skewed towards people who like libraries, and so we don't really look at when we read those, but those weren't counted towards the statistics because they weren't as significant. But we actually have PDF files that have a summary of all the respondents and the ones in just the city, so we can just put that together and distribute that. So, but so roughly it was
200 came back out of 1,000?
Right.
Sporadic, not city, not 200 city, 200.
Right, and I'll say that, roughly, since the city makes up about half the service population, there's about half of the respondents probably were in the city, but I don't have those numbers memorized, but you'll see them when you get the result files.
One of the other things that is, we make up, as Jeff just said, about 50% of this service population. Mm-hmm. Yet it's back on our laps to say, find a way to fund this library, where we have half the other folks that are in the service area that are going to not contribute as much as we're going to have to contribute, including the building, the maintenance, the budgeting. And, we're able to do it with fire. We're able to work together with those folks on fire. We're able to work together with EMS. Mm-hmm. I just can't figure out why we can't work together on our library, because it serves over 50% of people that do not live in the city of Hudson. And for them to, it's, they're pretty frustrated, and they decided they want to pull out. And so it puts everything back on our laps again, and we've got to make the hard decisions again. And we end up with the building and some of the other things, so I just think that's it's I think we get kind of pushed that it's our responsibility, but it's really not. It's half of our responsibility, not the whole responsibility. But we're going to get stuck with it, if you want to use those terms.
I don't feel stuck. It seems like an opportunity.
Okay.
I don't mean to be overly optimistic, but there has to be a way forward here. And
without a doubt. But
and everyone seems to want that. So I think if we take kind of, as you point out, take a couple steps back and try to get down the road a ways, meaning that we originally thought this was the building, we originally thought the police would move out. We haven't engaged in finding a location for our police fire, so that's kind of another side of the coin. So all these things aren't really have come to fruition. So if we had a longer term plan, I think we could proceed much more with much more purpose than just trying to kind of beat the tax rap or get the citizens to vote yes in a referendum. I think we just need a little more broader vision.
I agree with you, John, but the biggest, most frustrating thing for me is that it's been, when did this come in, 2008? And
I think that's when we started.
So it's been 5 years, and there was this whole, I'm reading the original packet from when the whole thing started, and there was all these promises to fundraise and match and get endowments and get capital funding, and you know, and that the capital campaign was going to start right away after the referendum passed, which I get it wasn't the whole referendum, but the library, excuse me? I'm sorry? I get that it failed, but the library still exists, which means we need to fundraise. It's not like the referendum failed, but we still put a building and a library in place, which means I feel that the library board, which is in place to help sustain the library, should have been fundraising from day one. When they sent their letter out last year, I gave as a citizen. My kids use the library. Okay, so you sent a letter to me, and I gave you a good amount of money for our family budget because to keep the library.
We very much appreciate that.
But that's the point, is that that was the only attempt made for fundraising. That was only after, like you said, you got a little nudge. You know, and I don't care if a referendum failed. I know, and I appreciate that you did the fundraising. I know that you were a part of that, and I appreciate that. I'm talking previous years.
Right.
And that 4 years prior, there was not outside fundraising that was done besides minimal nominal amounts. And in this city, we fundraised to build a YMCA, we fundraised for a hockey arena, we fundraised for a Field of Dreams, and it was all successfully done. So I struggle to see why this couldn't have happened in the last 4 or 5 years. That's just my frustration. And I mean, my kids use the library often. I don't want to see it go either, but that I think is a fair frustration to have. Whether a referendum
totally
passes or
can
not.
understand. Yes, I can totally understand. So, but I would like to figure out how we can work together to figure out that future.
Barb, how about if we have some more, whether it's a public hearing and as far as letting folks give us their ideas and so we can move forward.
That would be wonderful.
Sure.
I'd look forward to
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
and then Barb, we need to get these identities together, the library board, the Friends of the Library, and this council, or whoever wants to participate, because it's been muddied up so much with different opinions, different board members that have been on and off, the Friends, the board, the library. It's confusing, and there's a lot of opinions out there.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor, I agree with you, but let's make sure we have all the players involved with this, so there's not a he said, she said, this thing, that thing.
We have a joint library board where we have representatives from all of the
But
municipalities.
I would,
And
it's
I better not
dysfunctional
say
at
what I
best.
thought. Well, okay, that's what I was going to say, but I didn't.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I said it's dysfunctional at best, because the information that this board has gotten over the past years has been so far and few between. You know, you couldn't imagine the information. I've got a stack at home like this from library. Where's it coming from?
Right.
What's right, what's wrong? How do you know when you go through a stack of papers that big?
Right.
Well,
You got to get on the same page is what I'm suggesting, Mr. Mayor.
But the other problem with that is that to bring the joint library board together with us, how long will that be around anyway? If it goes the way it's going.
Well, they could rescind. They have till August 31st
I
to
know, so
rescind. So if we can
we're
find a
somewhat in
solution,
limbo.
maybe they'll rescind.
I think we still have to make plans, though, that we have to try and make
Yeah.
some alternatives.
I
We
agree.
can't just wait until we say the state's going to change or
Right.
that the other municipalities are going to come back in. I don't think we can do that.
Right.
We have to make decisions. We have to plan for the
But
future.
we can plan for both. I mean, we
Exactly.
can have two roads we're gonna take. You know, one if
Exactly.
they rescind and one if they don't.
That's right. That would be wonderful to have two paths forward. So I look forward to working with you. We'll get the information on the surveys. Devin, you'll provide the financials. And at any point, if you have further questions, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. My husband and I are going to Mississippi to build houses for Habitat for Humanity, but I'll be back, and then I'm not gone until the fall. So.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming tonight, Barb, and we
Thank you.
happy to have
Thank
that
you.
information.
Yeah, thank
Does
you
anybody
very
have
much
any
for
other
your
questions for
attention.
Barb?
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, is it appropriate for people in the audience here to speak on this
City residents.
I don't think we have a public hearing tonight.
We'll have a public hearing.
We can schedule one where we can get input from the public, if that's okay. Is that okay with you, Barb?
I think that would be, then everyone could come prepared.
Yes.
And we could, and then we'd have all the players here to hear.
Okay.
I'm
That's
sad that
Barb's.
Rich Fanslow, who is one of our
Board
8
members.
board members.
How about the rest of the board? What's your feeling?
I think a public hearing, like Barb said, everybody will be here, all the players.
Anybody?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd rather have a public hearing.
All right?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Communication recommendations from the mayor. We had a opening on our cable board, and I've contacted Mr. Gordon Anderson. Has he agreed to serve on the board? So I'd like you to finish out Ms. McCormick's 3-year term, which goes through April of 2014. So I'd like to see a motion, if you would.
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor of Mr. Anderson being on the cable board?
Aye.
Motion carries. Couple other things. This weekend is the...
Ladies and gentlemen, we still have a meeting going on, so thank you.
This weekend, we have the Hudson Hot Air Affair. So I would sure appreciate you folks attending. It's a great time and lots of events, and we'll have lots of fun. So that. The other thing, I met with staff on last Friday on January 25th for a 5-year financial management plan. We met with Mr. Sean Ellers.
John Lentz.
Lentz from Ellers Associates. And we're working on that. We did the first phase of our 5-year plan before we bring it back to you folks for review and approval, hopefully.
And it'll be going through the committees first before it comes to the council, so that, you know, the committees are aware of what's going on. If there's tweaks they want to make to it before it gets to the full council.
When are we going to see that?
Pardon?
Probably late February, early March.
Okay.
Neil, does that sound about right?
He's in the hall.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm guessing late February, early March. Okay.
We've also, you know, we've got all of our funding bonds in here, and you know, they do a really nice job, and you guys will see it all, just to let you know that we haven't dropped the ball on that.
At this point, it's the wish list, which includes everything, and the next step is going back to the department heads to prioritize, because obviously they can't do everything. You know, what's most important, and then as the money becomes available, the committees and the council can decide what's going to be funded.
Also in your packets, you saw the quarterly investment report from Neil. I thought that was, I don't know if we see that quarterly or not, but it's very good. And then the year-end numbers, if you had a chance to look at those, I think we have a lot of information there. And so if you have questions, call Neil or Devin up on those. Go ahead.
And we will have something of a surplus that we'll be able to stick into a health insurance reserve. Haven't finalized the number, but there are unspent personnel funds from this past year, so hopefully by next meeting I can get you that number.
That's all I had. Any alderperson? City attorney?
Nope.
City administrator?
Briefly, spring primary election is February 19th, regular polling places 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are available now by mail, and in-person is starts Monday the 4th and goes through Friday the 15th for in-person absentee. I did mention earlier, after the Finance Committee meeting, that the community room at the Government Center will no longer be available to us for elections beginning probably after the April election. Hopefully they'll let us go through April. So we've already started to look for alternative sites. Just so everybody's aware, it has to be in the city. We've had a couple of suggestions for buildings outside of the city, but the polling place has to be in the city.
We checked with St. Pat's.
We've checked with St. Pat's, we've checked with Presbyterian. When we first went to Methodist Church a few years back, we will follow up with them. Lori had an idea earlier, but just to make you aware of that. So there will be a change for sure for 2014 of where the polling sites will be. The county is going to be using that community room for an expansion of the 911 center. That's what make everybody aware of that.
Anything else? Anything you'd like to add to the next agenda? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.